Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Particular conference room of a corporation, and the conference room is filled with all these, bottles of liquor and bottles of champagne and all this other stuff, right? All this, and it's literally everybody is in the same crowd doing the same exact thing because they feel like they have to do it to keep somebody's attention. You don't even go there. Like, you're not even in that mix. You don't send gifts until Valentine's Day. But I love the fact that you send them on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So what's funny? So two things. One is, before your audience goes and buys the book and invests dollars, they could get that list of 10 things, worst things to avoid giving, just to be in the top 5% of gift givers or relationship builders, really. Yeah. The Giver's Edge with an S, thegiversedge.com. They can download the 10 worst gifts to avoid giving. They get like our best articles in Forbes and New York Times and all that, so that you don't even have to go invest in the book. Like, if you would just follow what we send you for free, you'd be in the top 5% of relationship builders.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to invest in the book, that's great. Our whole playbook's there. There's no like giftology 2 that you have to like pay for. Like, it's all right there. But it's amazing to me that people don't like understand, like, the timing of things matters.
Yeah.
Like most people are playing in that sandbox, anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas. That's when they do gifts.
Yeah.
Or they have a conference. We're gonna do gifts. Those are like expected obligatory times. Like, if you're married and you show up on Valentine's Day for your wife, like, do you earn brownie points? No. Like, you're just trying to keep it at neutral.
Right.
It's when you show up on a random Tuesday in April and say, hey, honey, I got you the 4 seasons booked, and I got the 4 girls and whatever. Like, that's where you earn. And the same thing with your client. If you show up for them on Christmas and then you're one of 67 gifts that are on the conference table, if you've ever seen National Lampoon's Chevy Chase, where he walks in with the gift for his boss, and he's like, put it over there with the other one's greaseball. Like, doesn't even know his name. Like, he just like, it's just noise.
Yeah. And
so as an entrepreneur, my goal is always to be like, I want to put $1 in and get $10 back out.
Yeah.
I can only do that if I'm going against the grain and doing something different than all of my competitors and helping my clients do the exact same thing. Like, you can't be sheep. You can't follow what everybody else does and expect it to be a wow. You have to be willing to break the rules.
Yeah. It's the definition of insanity, right? So talk about this thing that I dearly love. And I know we're talking about timing, right? Talk about this thing that I dearly love. You call it planned randomness.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we avoid, anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas. We started to do then like, oh, we'll do Thanksgiving, or hey, we'll do Valentine's Day. Here's what we realized in the last couple of years since some of those episodes came out, is that if you send something at Valentine's Day instead, it still feels like marketing, because people are like, oh, I'm like, it's all about love and whatever else. There's a trigger for it, right? The trigger was the holiday. Yeah. And we got cute with the wording about, we love working with you, whatever else. What we realized is that if I sent it, instead of at Valentine's Day, I sent it on like January 31st. And I just said, hey, I'm sending this to you from my family to your family, just because of the relationship.
Yeah.
That person feels like they're one-to-one. They don't feel like it was marketing, because like a lot of times people will go away from Christmas being like, it's too noisy. We'll go to a different holiday. Well, guess what? You're still making it marketing.
Right.
And marketing doesn't deepen the relationship. Marketing is cool and it's catchy and it's playful. And so we started doing like planned randomnesses. We pick a random day in the middle of February that's not Valentine's Day. We pick a random day in the middle of May that's not like anything. And the only reason you're sending something to the employee, the supplier, the client, is I'm sending this to you just because.
Yeah.
And people freak out. They're like, I didn't send a deal. I didn't send a referral.
Right.
It's not my birthday. It's not Christmas. Like, Mike, what the heck are you doing?
Right. The holiday's the trigger.
Holiday is the trigger.
Right. And so they're
planned
triggered by
randomness
the
is
holiday.
no
And
trigger.
then you show up in the middle of wherever just because. I love that. I love that.
It's the Ritz. I mean, I didn't invent, like, what's so funny is, like, if you go into scripture, Proverbs 18:16 says, a gift ushers you before kings.
Yeah.
I didn't invent any of this.
Yeah.
But in America specifically, but really the world at large, almost everybody does things that are expected, obligatory, like transactionally. Like, we say we're in the like relationship business, but when do we give gifts? After a deal's done, after a referral's given. That's not relational. That's give to get. That's, you gave me this, I'll give you this.
Yeah.
That there's nothing wrong with that, but in the overall structure, like Ritz-Carlton got famous for surprise and delight.
Yeah.
The surprise element of things, of like, I'm doing this not because I had to, I'm doing this because I wanted to. That shifts everything. That's how you can take a billionaire, because so many people are like, John, I got billionaire clients, or I got guys that can buy anything that they want. I'm like, great. The surprise element's even more important. If you give them gifts at transactional expected times, like anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas, after deals done, after referrals given, they can go buy their own Rolex.
Yeah.
But if you go and show up for them and say, hey, I hand selected this Rolex for you, and I engraved your mission statement, and my hope is that you'll pass this down to your great grandson, Steve, who's now 4, but eventually someday, now you have a story and a meaning, and now it's an artifact. And that is something that people can't go buy. And so that's why the knives work. Like, the amount of times we pour into people and we're like, I can send 1,000 gifts to 1,000 addresses and say, hey, as you break bread with your family and celebrate, bar mitzvah or the Christmas, or like, you can personalize what they're going to be celebrating. I wanted to provide tools that you can use as you break bread with your loved ones, and maybe future generations from now be reminded of the legacy that you created. And so now the handwritten note that goes with it is creating framing and context. And a lot of times people will try to duplicate giftology and they miss the handwritten note and they don't get the response. And it's the handwritten note provides the meaning, that provides the context. Yeah. If you just send crap from Amazon, even expensive crap, it feels like marketing. Right. But somebody gets something with a handwritten note, now it feels relational. Yeah. Now it feels like one-to-one. Now it feels like it shifts the whole paradigm of how they receive it. And so people like giftology versus giftology-ish, like two very different things. Like, you got to put all the ingredients in to get bread. You forget one ingredient, you don't get bread.
That's it. So I wanted you to know you're having an impact beyond what you realized. Okay. I was literally interviewing a gentleman the other day that owns his own company, and he has 10 employees. And we were talking about the key to being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, owning your own company, right? And he literally we started talking about mindset. We started talking about leadership, all this kind of thing. And one of the things that I told him was, I said, John Ruhlin and his company, the Ruhlin Group, pay for their employees' houses to be cleaned.
Yeah.
And the light went on. So he's literally looking into having it, because all of a sudden he's like, oh my goodness, that would make him a lot happier. Right? So you're actually having an impact, brother, beyond what you realize.
That's so cool. And we want people to take the recipe and go do it. Like, our agency can only handle so many clients. Yeah. And we're not a fit for everybody. But if I can inspire leaders to be more generous with their employees and their clients, like, you could get 1 million leaders to impact 1 billion people. Yeah. Right? Because it starts with leadership. Yeah. If the owner is generous, if the owner is thoughtful, if the owner is strategic and creative and is doing these things, it empowers his team or her team to go out and start doing these things with their relationships and their clients and the people that they're serving. But it starts with the leaders. And so, like, getting people to say, like, I offer health insurance, but nobody cries when they get health insurance. Like, it's like kind of like just expected, right? So it's like an obligation. Whereas, like, employee house cleaning for every employee is like $3,000 a year. Yeah. But they brag about that way more than they do almost anything else. Like, I have one employee that her parents are doctors. Mm-hmm. And when they're at dinner parties, what do they bring up? They talk about giftology because her daughter works there. She's a giftologist. And by the way, she gets her house cleaned every other week. She gets her own housekeeper. Yeah. She's not bragging about benefits, pay. Like, what's she bragging about? The way you're showing up for those relationships, those employees, is now inspiring parents that they're like proud that their kid is working for your company. not just because of pay or culture. Like culture is a part of like how you treat people.
Mhm.
And like the house cleaning thing is like something that nobody does. And so it freaks people out, even though it costs 1/10 the amount of some of the other benefits we offer.
But here's the thing, those employees are walking, talking billboards, okay? And some of your absolute best salespeople on the planet are happy employees.
If you're so I'll say take it a step further, that if your employees are not recruiting their family and friends to come work for your company, you don't have loyalty.
Yeah.
You have somebody transacting and collecting a paycheck for work. You know when you have active loyalty, when your employees or your clients are recruiting their family and friends to come want to work with your company.
Yeah.
And if you don't have people doing that, then there's issues on loyalty and culture. They're not feeling the love that you think that they're feeling. Like, you know, when you're loyal to somebody, like if your kid, you know, if your kid wants to get into Harvard, you're like, you'll do anything possible, connect dots to try to get your kid into Harvard, right? Because you're loyal to your kid. And the same thing with a company. You can tell when people are like, man, you got to come work for us. You only do that with your family and friends if you feel like this is going to be a good experience for them.
Yeah.
And so the amount of times when leaders are like, yeah, we're good on loyalty. I'm like, well, tell me, why do you have a headhunting firm? Like, oh yeah, we're pretty good on loyalty. I'm like, once again, the numbers don't lie. If your people aren't recruiting their family and friends, if your clients aren't sending you referrals, then there's an issue on like transactions versus like making them feel special.
Yeah.
And it's super simple, really hard to execute at scale.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the magical things about you and about what you're doing is, even from the very beginning, you were trying to solve problems that were much, much larger than what that CEO that you sat with when you were in college thought you were there to do, right? You were there to help his sales reps make thousands and thousands of sales, right?
Yeah.
Right. And
business owners don't care about gifts.
Sell him something. You with me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a business owner, if you tell a business owner or leader, C-suite, hey, if you send out, 5,000 gerbils, your company will grow 50% this year. They're stroking the check to send out 5,000 gerbils.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because at the end of the day, they want to be able to make investments that produce results and revenue and referrals and retention and loyalty. Like the whole, like, people get stuck on, I'm not a gift giver, I don't care about gifts, or like, that's not important to me. I'm like, you're right. I don't, like, my love language isn't even gifting. If you read the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, 22 million books sold, 5 languages. People are like, I'm not a gift giver. I'm like, great. My love language is actually words of affirmation.
Right.
And I'm naturally introverted, funny enough. But when I give a great gift to 200 people, guess what? I get 200 people reaching out, wanting to collaborate and engage me.
Yeah.
I learned that from Paul. Like, I give a great gift, I don't have to be the life of the party.
Exactly.
They're coming to me. And so many times people are like, I don't care about gifts. I'm like, great, I don't care about gifts either. But do you want to grow your revenue? Do you want to grow this? But yeah. All right. Well, if you call people like, hey, you want to buy, $500,000 in knives, people are like, click. Yeah. If you say, hey, I have a solution for you to help you grow your referrals an extra 20%. Like, we had a client in financial services that I met, and he's one of the largest coaching companies in the world for financial services, all 7-figure earners. He had, 25 grand a year to coach with his company. And he hated the idea of what we were doing. He's like, that's tchotchke cute. Like, he literally told my face, that's cute, but that would never work for my company.
Yeah.
At a mastermind. So I'm at this $25,000 mastermind. So I start sending gifts to his house, and I included his wife. I did the research. We knew his wife's name was Jan. So knives, leather goods, different things. I didn't ask for anything, because to the point of like appreciating somebody for their time, he spent an hour with me at this event. An hour of his time is probably worth 10 grand at least.
Sure.
Right. So I start making these deposits. 6 months go by. I saved his number. I get a phone call from, his name was John. He said, John Ruhlin. I said, yes, sir. He's like, John Bowen here. He's like, I told you to your face, I thought the gifts were kind of cute, but that wouldn't work in our industry. And then about, a month later, you dropped me this package. I thought it was, well played, but I forgot about it 5 minutes later. And then you dropped me another package. And then 3 months in, we're getting ready to go to bed. And my wife, Jan, says, hey, have you done anything with John Ruhlin lately? And I thought that was super weird.
I love it.
Yeah, no. And then a week later, we're having lunch. we're using one of the stupid knives, and Jan says, "Hey, are you going to grab lunch with John sometime?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I wasn't planning on it."
Yeah.
He's like, "I feel like I'm sleeping with your sales rep. My wife won't shut up about John Ruhlin. She's never met you before."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Will this work this way in my business?" I said, "Yeah, if you follow the recipe."
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, I want to order a bunch of stuff and give it out at my event." I'm like, "No, we won't do that."
Yeah.
It's like, "I don't want to pay for shipping." I'm like, "If you won't pay for shipping, then you don't want, like, if you're worried about shipping costs relative to referrals and deal and revenue, you're tripping over pennies,
Right.
like not realizing you're missing all the dollars."
Right.
And he fought me every step of the way. Why do we have to have the handwritten note? Why do we have to include the spouse? So we sent knives under $500 to all of his clients. They were all 7-figure earners.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only difference that he did for this big event. And we sent him out ahead of time as a surprise.
Right.
Afterwards, he asked for referrals, which I don't recommend doing the gift and then ask for referrals, but it was his event. So on the survey, it was like, "Hey, who else do you know that might benefit from our services?" Kind of one of those kind of asks.
Right.
A 5% increase in referrals for him would have been like lights out, because a typical client for him is worth 6 figures lifetime value.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
He's like, "John," he called me a month later, said, "John, we triple checked the numbers. We've did nothing different other than we followed your relationship plan and sending these silly knives. Our referrals went up 107% over any year we've ever done this."
Wow.
107%. A $500
Wow.
doesn't even buy somebody's wine bill for the week.
Dude,
For these guys, they are all 7-figure financial advisors. Why did it work?
Yeah.
The psychology of the way God's wired us is when you make a deposit into somebody, no strings attached, you make somebody feel a certain way, we
They
want to
reciprocate.
reciprocate, and oftentimes it's unequal.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a douchebag, now John's a great guy, but if
Yeah.
you're a douchebag and you give great gifts, you're just magnifying that you're a douchebag.
Right.
So don't think that you can be this, total a-hole
Right.
and give great gifts and that will cover it up.
Right.
But if you're like, "Man, I have a good product or service, I'm likable, like I'm doing good things. Why am I not getting more employees? Why am I not getting more clients?" You're not creating the story. You're not creating the surprise and delight moment where they want to go then tell that story. And the whole recipe, like including the spouse with these guys, was so massively important. And he was like, "I don't know any of the spouses' names." I'm like, "Well, there's your homework.
Yeah.
Get your assistant on the line." And he's like, "That's a lot of time." I'm like, "John, if you don't get that piece of data, don't expect the results that you want on the back end."
Right.
Those details matter.
Yeah. They absolutely.
Even if you're going to scale it, the details matter. And that's where people like, they cut corners. I'll just order a bunch of expensive Patagonia, whatever. They stamp their logo on it. They give it out at the conference in front of everybody, and they drop 200 grand and they get nothing for it because they didn't emotionally connect with the person. They just gave out cool swag.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but that doesn't move the needle. That doesn't like get you 10-to-1 ratio. Put $1 into the ATM machine, get $10 back out. That's just cool swag. And I'm all for cool swag.
The point you make is you give them something, and let's use your example, the Patagonia thing, right? But it's got your logo on it.
Which is, it's not a gift.
You with me? And so they get it and they go, right? And what you're doing is, and you made a great point, you're asking them to be your walking billboard.
It's a manipulation.
Yeah. And people are not necessarily wanting to do something like that, but you send them something that their wife uses every day in the kitchen and absolutely loves. And, we've talked about knives a lot. Okay. But here's the thing. If your wife has used really cheap knives and then you get her a really good set of like real quality knives, right? It's a completely different impression.
It's radically. And people are like, "Oh, let's get the Target version." I'm like, yeah, it needs to be best in class. It doesn't have to be Cutco. But even the engraving on the pieces, their name, their family name, now it's an artifact or an heirloom versus just being the crappy set that they got for their wedding that's going to be thrown away in 10 years, right? Like most people, you have a 10-year window of even a physical good. You give them a best in class. I mean, even like what we did for Pastor Jurgen. People are like, I used to make fun of mugs and backpacks as worst gifts. The $2,000 artifact mug, why is it $2,000? Well, it's carved into your moments of your life, your faith, family, core values, who believed in you first. It's a lifetime achievement award. Now every day as you're drinking your coffee and tea, you're being reminded of what matters, and you're subtly reminded of the giver in their generosity.
So let's talk about it for a second, because not everybody that's listening to this was at the Pathfinders event. So you did this, you did your talk, your presentation, and I told
keynote,
I told you I was so unbelievably impressed with you that I literally bought your audiobook before you were off stage. Okay. And
That's
I'm
awesome.
not joking. I had it downloaded and we were ready to hit play. I was literally listening to you and the giftology book on the way out of the church. My daughter got in the car. I was her ride, got in my truck, and she's like, "Wait, is that John Ruhlin's voice?" I'm like, "You better believe it, baby. We're listening to giftology on the way home, right?" So here's the thing. So at Awaken, the pastor and his pastor Jurgen is the head pastor of the whole church, right? And there's six campuses now, and then they're expanding into Salt Lake City and Boise, which is really
Idaho,
cool, right? Really cool. So you actually did your talk, and then you were like, "Hey, I want to gift you something," and you
it came from the church.
Yeah,
the church paid for it.
You literally had a video done of how all this came about and why each thing on these mugs, these custom mugs, why each one of these things was there. They were so unbelievably blown away, and everybody in the place was. I mean, it was emotional, John. It was one of those things where you're sitting there, and I learned things about Pastor Jurgen and his wife that I didn't even know, right? And a lot of people didn't know, and people were literally gasping in the audience as you guys went through all this. That was one of the most special things I've ever seen in my life, and you were responsible for making that happen. But it's exactly what you do every day, where you make things. It's like the Rolex with the mission statement on it, right? Or the big, huge 50-inch wood plaque that you had engraved for the Orlando Magic that had their mission statement on it, right? You know, you're always thinking in terms of, how can I make their lives better and reach them in a place that's much deeper than the surface?
Yeah.
And that's the coolest thing. And so that's what I want people to understand. I want people to understand that you're not only teaching this, you're not only all in on this deal, you're also living it every single day. And you did that day on stage. They were completely blown away by those mugs. Okay.
Yeah. Which sounds silly, right? A mug should not do that.
Well, who in the world invests $2,000 in a mug? Okay.
Nobody. But they'll invest $2,000 in a bar tab.
But it's the experience, man. It's the experience. And it's like you said, they're literally every day they're going to be drinking out of those mugs, you know, drinking their coffee, their tea, whatever. And they're looking at all those things and remembering that amazing video that you had done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we're all trying to, we're trying to connect the dots and connect with people emotionally, right? Because their heart, and you get somebody's heart, and then you have that talk trigger, like, and you're doing it in a way that, like, people don't necessarily need more things on their walls. Like, people during COVID, Goodwill had a line a mile long, people getting rid of all this stuff, right? Just junk.
Right.
We've had people that are celebrities that send us, videos, because we help clients of all sizes give these gifts to. Some people are pretty affluent, in the public eye. And one of the guys was like, "John, if my house is on fire, I'm grabbing my kids and I'm grabbing this mug."
Yeah.
Is the mug the most expensive thing in his house? No. It's the one that it's the thing that has the most depth and meaning to it. It's usually, like, if you think about when people's houses on fire, it's like a flag that their dad served in the military, or maybe some pictures, or it's something that has meaning and story that's like that MasterCard commercial. It's priceless. Yeah. That's what you grab, right? And so when you can incorporate in the business world that's very transactional and emotional, deep, one-to-one, because like, the people that you go to war for are the people that, like, that in business, you'll invite to your house, you've gotten to know their kids and their family and their spouse. Like, those are real relationships. Yeah. And we all want more of those people out there in the world that know that we care for them and they care for us, but we don't have a plan on how we're actually, like, executing those things. We're just like, we're sponsoring this and slapping our logo on that and spending, like, we throw around a lot of money as a business, but we're not doing it intentionally in a way that actually drives real meaning for the other person, which sounds woo-woo, but Like
No,
people make those decisions based upon those emotional feelings.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head when you said heirloom, right? Because this is something that yeah, they'll literally grab that mug. Pastor Jurgen, if his house is on fire, he's grabbing his and Leanne's mug and they're headed right. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it's because of that experience, and because they had that experience with everybody that was there. It was really cool. Like, it was one of the coolest moments ever. So real quick, I just want to talk about this one example that you said, because one of the things that you talk about is, if you think that heirlooms don't matter, listen to this, right? This $5 million estate, and these kids, these heirs, fought and lost all $5 million over this one item, right? And you're like, and you'd think that it was a house on the beach, or you'd think that it was this, or you'd think that it was that. Turned out it was a $10 harmonica that dad played every night after dinner.
Yeah, true story. Yeah, a buddy of mine.
$5 million they blew fighting each other
of
over.
Inheritance. It's there's things that people get attached to the story and what it means in their life, and the patriarch, the dad played the harmonica every day for 40 years. 3 kids, he passes. They all want the harmonica, because when they thought of their dad, they thought of the harmonica.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the expense; it was literally a $10 harmonica. But yeah, they blew through $5 million of inheritance, and that's really, like, it just shows people make are very irrational. Humans are very irrational. They could have buy a bazillion harmonicas, but the story that was attached to that. And so, like, my buddy, who's an attorney now, is a top speaker, Joey Coleman, wrote the book Never Lose a Customer, Never Lose an Employee. He's like, John, you help create those harmonicas in people's life, at scale. Like, you're helping create these legacy pieces and heirlooms, and whether it's the mug or the knives or whatever it is, for the Chicago Cubs, the Bluetooth speaker made out of 100-year-old wood. Yeah. They're all just, story elements. And then they also have a functionality. That's the other thing. Like, a lot of times people make really creative things and it's a paperweight.
Yeah.
Well, I want something that people are going to use with their family, actually use and touch. Because as humans, like, there's something powerful when you're touching it, seeing it. Like, we're visual, we're tactile. Everything's so digital anymore. When you can put something in their life that they're seeing and touching every single day, there's a connection point that talks, that creates that talk trigger. And so many people, they try to do that, but they miss the boat, and that's where they get into the swag element of, like, what's the cheapest version of that?
Okay.
It's like, hey, I can't afford a Rolex, so I'll do a Seiko. Yeah. And you're giving a $1,000 Seiko out to everybody.
Right.
Right. They're like, I'm not taking my Rolex off to put your Seiko on.
Right.
I'm definitely not doing it with your logo on it.
Right.
And so many people, they think it's the what. It's not the what. The what is important, but it's the who, and it's the how, and it's the when, and it's the why. All of that is what encompasses and makes it, like, go from just being crap that's showing up from Amazon or in the mail to being like, no, this person sees me, cares about me, understands what I care about, which is my family. Like, all of those little details and elements is why people try to duplicate this, or they're like, they cut their gifting budget and their generosity budget, and they spend over here gladly on Facebook ads and whatever else, $100,000 a month. And they don't understand that they're missing out by not investing in their relationships this way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's all about going deep with you, right? It's all about reaching, and reaching is not easy nowadays, right? Like, you learned it at that seminar there, back years ago. Darren Hardy said there were 30,000 a day. There's probably 300,000 now, messages that people are getting, and cutting through all that and getting to the heart of things and creating conversation pieces, that kind of thing, right? Something that's like we talked about, an heirloom, that kind of deal. That's real magic. That's real magic. And what it comes from is what you originally learned from Paul. We're way over on time, and I apologize. Let me ask you just a couple of real quick questions and we'll go. So What was your favorite thing about growing up where you grew up in Ohio?
Well, looking back, I look at it differently now than I did going through it. I just bought my wife and I have four girls, and bought a 40-acre farm because we kind of want to go back to our roots.
Yeah.
So I think that there's an element of, like, growing up in the Midwest, growing up working, growing up around like hardworking people, good people, like we're settling, we're raising our girls in the Midwest. I think that's one of the reasons is like there's a low key consistency, stability, calmness, work ethic that I was surrounded by. That was really, really powerful.
Yeah. Who was the most influential person to you growing up?
I had a handful of them. I mean, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. I didn't realize it at the time. I went fishing with him, and he was a man of few words, but when he listened, or when he spoke, you listened, kind of a person. Yeah. So I learned some things from my grandpa Kiko. And I think I gravitated towards people that were always older. I had, a number of teachers, Mr. Kelsey and different people that kind of spoke life into me or believed in me. But yeah, I would say probably my grandpa Kiko.
Cool. All right, buddy. So what is next for the Ruhlin Group and for you? What's the future?
Well, right now it's a waiting list only, but we have a beta program called Rich Relationships that there's a lot of companies that have a lot of sales reps, or they have they're too small to hire our agency, but they want to do this, and they need coaching, they need mentorship, they need a community, they need training, and so we're building out the Rich Relationships piece right now. Like I said, it's just beta testing it right now, but we started a community about a couple years ago on Facebook that was free, and we didn't know if anybody would care, and it grew to about 1,000 members really fast. And we're like, so people do care about this relationship thing and how to do it, and so I think we've attracted a lot of entrepreneurs and smaller business owners that are gonna latch on to having that coaching and training, and so that's something that's in the works, and maybe a future book too.
Cool. And we're going to have you back when you're ready to launch that, right?
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I apologize we ran over on time. I thoroughly enjoyed every second of our time together, and I'm looking forward to the future with you, bud.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.